lender. Is my brother in broadcast ready to rock and roll here for this morning? I do believe he is. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. How are you doing, buddy?
Good. Everything loud and clear. You can hear me. I can hear you. And let's do this. I was trying to catch up on. I was trying to catch up on this from yesterday, and I get one call and said this is the way it is, and then I get another call. This is the way it is, and I thought, it changes every 15 or 20 minutes. And I told Perez, I said, this is kind of like the MLB talks, labor talks, man. You just. Nobody wants to come together on this thing. But your analysis, and again, we're talking to Ricky Mathews. Ricky is my brother in broadcast and a SuperTalk Mississippi host of Coast View and SuperTalk Outdoors, the number one place to talk outdoors across the state. What's your overview of what happened yesterday? And we're talking about the personal income tax.
Well, first of all, it's hard to follow, to be quite honest with you. There's so many moving pieces to this. And what I keep coming back to, Paul, is the fact that you almost could see this conflict coming from a mile away, because what you've got is you got three Republican leaders. They are unfortunately have not been working together over the long haul on this issue. And I can't help but recall the times that I worked with Haley Barbour after Hurricane Katrina. I see the book America's Great Storm behind you, for a matter of fact, which I saw
the foreword. Yeah.
Yes, but Haley was famous for bringing people together into the room and agreeing on the big issues. And when you think about something like the state eliminating the state income tax and what we know it could possibly do for us from an economic development point of view. It's something that, and it's complicated. It's something that you should be bringing the leaders together in the same room together. And listen, I was involved in major strategic efforts, corporate strategic efforts during my career. And I think when you bring a lot of stakeholders to the table, it's important for them to agree on a process, on a roadmap going forward. I mean, forget about the content, forget about how we're going to get it done, but let's just agree on a roadmap. They didn't have that. And when you do agree on a roadmap, you may disagree about how to best accomplish the goal, but you can at least be singing from the same hymnal about the approach that we're using to get to an end. I felt like, frankly, you've got look at the big three for a second. You got Tate Reeves, who is a numbers guy. You would have thought that would have played to his benefit. You've got a lieutenant governor who was a tax lawyer. I mean, the ultimate numbers guy, and then of course the speaker's desire to want to do this. If they would have come together and agreed on a roadmap, I think we'd be in a different place today. Now here we are at the last, last second, so to speak. We can't agree on a lot, to be quite honest with you. And then in the midst of the pandemic, with all these complicated financial gyrations. I'm not hopeful that we'll figure it out.
I believe the reason, and you hit it right on, because, and I've said this a million times, if you really wanted to do this, and you really wanted to do it for the people of the state that you serve, and you have a heart of a public servant, which is very, very rare to find these days in a politician, and I understand that. But if you wanted to do that, then 2 summers ago, certainly last summer, during these hearings and everything else, you bring people together from the House and Senate, not as enemies, but as a coalition of people working for the betterment of the state. And it aggravated the hell out of me that it was almost like, first of all, it's about me and my office, and you can't even take party in here anymore because they're all Republicans. And if it's a good idea, if it's a good idea, if it's a bad idea, all together in unison, you say it's a bad idea. But and I'll say this, and I've got to be very careful on how I skip around this, but in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I have heard some things that may explain all of this stuff if it happens, about political careers, decisions being made, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now. But it does fall in place what could be happening, and that's a story for another time. But you were right. It is complicated as it can be, but can you make heads or tails out of this? Because the House got the Senate's version. The Senate was crowing about this. Here's what we've done. This is a great idea. We've made concessions. The House got it. They did a strike all, added some stuff, and sent it back to the Senate. So it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to make that deadline.
And Paul, the other issue is all these added variables. You know, whether this should be a car tax cut or not, and as you've heard, Democrats can't be for it if that's not part of the plan. And then you've got this notion around gasoline tax cut for 6 months, and all these added variables and these complicated. That's why you have to have agreement. Listen, you can completely disagree on the fundamentals of how to get where we need to go. I mean, this is a complicated conversation. But if we just had a similar roadmap, if we had a leader, I wish the governor had led on this early on. He's letting the two legislative bodies sort of duke it out. It's a little late now to inject his leadership on this. I think at the end of the day, man, here's where I stand. I think it would be better to do nothing than to make a major mistake. If we cut too much, and we dig a hole for the state of Mississippi, given how complicated this is, we will not do us justice. And frankly, I think it's going to be really important to see what a run on the most recent numbers are going to be based on current projections, et cetera, because we can't have $1 billion hole going into a new world with no income tax. That would be a major disaster for Mississippi.
Well, that's one of the reasons, Ricky, that I thought the 1.5% or 1.5 cents is was not that big of a deal. And then you had some people. Yeah. When we first started off on this, the agriculture part of this, they wanted to drop off. Some other people pushed their political power, and I understood that. But it's not that big of a deal when you look at what you get in return for the sales tax to be 8.5% as a user fee versus 7%. Yeah. And that was always, bad PR, and that kind of exploded too. So the House now says, okay, we'll take the sales tax out of it, which means you have a bigger hole to fill. And nobody's talking about the revenue. If it's anything like the under expectation of lottery, sports betting, and the casinos themselves, where is that money going to go? And nobody's put a certain number or even ballpark.
No, I mean, we desperately need some leadership in this conversation. I'm worried here in this final hour we may be focused a little bit too much on getting something done. We sort of abandoned all the modeling that we've done, and now we're just focusing on being able to say we got something done. Again, a hodgepodge approach to something like this is dangerous for the state of Mississippi. And unfortunately, what we end up with is a lot of political posturing. And at a time, I mean, we've said this before, but at a time when we have the big three, the lieutenant governor, the speaker, and the governor, all Republicans, we could be doing some important things for this state. But you got to be on the same page. You have to have a similar roadmap that we all agree to, that will help us get from where we are now to where we're going. Because, man, if we can't agree on that, how can we possibly agree on some last minute, jockeying that makes at least something happen? It sounds hodgepodge. I'm not confident we're going to get where we need to go.
I agree with you. I think we're going to be. I think most people in the House and Senate are have decided that the best thing for this to do is let the governor call that and take it off of them. The other part, you mentioned something too. You talked about there are so many people in this audience who are like we are. You and I. We're both politically involved and aware of what's going on in the state. And the thing that aggravates the heck out of both of us, if we are not getting the numbers in accurately to make that decision, the information, the data in, to form an opinion one way or the other, which we want to do because that's the reason we're politically active. And we have been tremendously confused on that. The numbers that you get and I get from one side do not jive in any form or fashion with the other side, whether they be economists or anybody else. So when you say, okay, what you're doing according to the other side will make us vulnerable, and this side says, no, we're not using any first-time dollars or one-time dollars, and it goes back and forth, and it just leaves us confused as we can be. And then we even have people who can't agree whether some of the Democrats especially can't even agree if dropping the income tax to be competitive with the neighbors around is true or not. It's not going to make us any better or worse. So we are a long way off. I want to talk about the Wildlife Fund when we come back with Ricky Mathews in just. Let's get back with Ricky Mathews, SuperTalk Mississippi host, and also Coast View and SuperTalk Outdoors. And we'll talk about that in a moment or two. There were three bills, Ricky, that wound up on the governor's desk. And real quick, one is HB 720, an act to provide minimum requirements that the Mississippi Department of Employment Security must meet related to its activities concerning fraud. It's kind of a boring one. Sam Mims' bill, HB 365, is now on the governor's desk awaiting signature. It's an act to establish the Mississippi Rural Hospital Loan Program in the State Department of Health to provide loans to rural hospitals to assist the hospitals in providing needed direct health care services. And number three is a House Bill 158. It has been sent to the governor. It's to revise the definition of all-terrain vehicles and recreational off-highway vehicles for the purpose of off-road vehicles and the operating of off-road vehicles. That's one that you might want to take a look at if you do own a four-wheeler. And again, that's House Bill 158. It is on the governor's desk. The Wildlife Fund, where does that stand, and what's your thoughts on it?
Well, as you know, I'm super passionate about it, as are lots of people across this state. We made a good go of it last year. This year, I think it's moving in the right direction. There's been a lot of discussion about it, but in a nutshell, for people who have not heard this conversation before, what the bill would do is create essentially an outdoor stewardship trust fund that would put a pot of money in a place that would give Mississippi the ability to draw down significant federal funds. It's estimated we're missing out on about $40 million a year in federal funds. Other states have these trust funds. We're only one or two states that don't have a trust fund like this. And as a result, we're not able to invest in conservation in this state in the way we need to. And I say on my show all the time, we're the capital of the outdoors in the United States. We need to be leading in this direction. Without breaking it all down, Paul, there's been tremendous progress on a lot of the sticky points between the House and the Senate bill. And I think we're at a place where it really comes down to funding. And I'm pleased to tell you that I had a conversation with the Lieutenant Governor this morning, and he assures me that the funding mechanism has been identified and that they are committed to funding it properly. So essentially where we are now is they don't like the House approach to divert the money. And so they've virtually agreed on just about every other aspect of the plan. But the big issue is funding it. We need to put the money in there and make sure that we get this thing started off on a really positive note. And the Lieutenant Governor assures me this morning that they are going to fund it properly, they're going to fund it significantly, and that he is very committed to it. And I think that's incredibly good news. I mean, that's like hot off the press. Because we've been really, really working. We need him to obviously sign off on this.
You said
I think they're going to get agreement now. Go ahead, Paul.
Identified it. I'm sorry. You said he's identified the mechanism.
Yes.
But they have no agreement yet on the mechanism.
Well, I think he said we'll be hearing soon more about that. We were talking just as I was about to sign in to join you on the show, so we literally didn't have time to get into any of the details. But he wanted to make sure that I knew that he was supporting the effort and really looking forward to getting us to a place where we could all be proud to have established a trust fund in Mississippi that won't give us, that won't put us in a position where we're missing out. Yeah. And we can start to get innovative. We can start creating wildlife habitat, doing the kind of stuff we want to do, both on public and private land. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think that's good news, the conversation that he and I had this morning.
There certainly was more give and take on that one than the personal income tax, to be honest with you, because at one point they said, let's take private off of it for the first year. We'll do this. Then they came back. Yeah. Lieutenant Governor said, well, let's, if you're worried about parks, we'll put $55 million in parks in a separate bill. So I'm not sure exactly how this thing is going to come out, but it's got to come out pretty soon. The other part of this is, and I was going to ask you, through the BP money and some of the other monies that came down, was any of that allocated to maybe this park system, at least Hattiesburg South, or was it none went to that?
Well, I mean, remember, 75% of the money stayed on the coast, and 25% went to the state. No, actually, that fund sits there and is allocated based on projects that come through an advisory committee. Some projects don't go through the advisory committee; they're able to go around it. I think that has to be fixed. Incidentally, we can talk about that some other time. But it's based on what the bill intended was for transformation. And I guess if a transformational parks type project were to be suggested, that it would be considered, because I think frankly we've struggled with defining what transformation means. We've got about 14 more years of allocation, so we've got plenty of time to fix that and make it the best it can be. And maybe there would be something that would apply to parks in the future.
It just seems to me that would be easily justified as far as, I don't know, I guess, again, what is transformational? My understanding was at one point is the things that are going to bring people into the state of Mississippi as far as tourism was one of the things. It seems that parks would have been somewhere on the top 10 list from some of that money. I have to ask you, this has nothing to do with any of this, and I had a story in the stack. It's been there for a couple of days. And the story on how former Biloxi Mayor Jerry O'Keefe took down the largest funeral company in North America is being told in an Amazon movie now filming in New Orleans. Do you know anything about this? This is very, very interesting.
Obviously I know the story well because the Sun Herald covered that lawsuit in incredible detail, actually. And Jerry O'Keefe made quite a name for himself for hanging in there and winning that. And I actually have his son Jeffrey O'Keefe coming on my show in the near future, and we're going to talk a lot more about it. But it's a great opportunity to focus on a phenomenal leader here in coastal Mississippi in Jerry O'Keefe, and the fact that he, this David and Goliath, legal battle has now become a movie. It'll be something that people will be very interested in, and it will bring focus back to Jerry O'Keefe, the former mayor of
They're going to film any of that on the coast, or is it all going to be in New Orleans?
I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. No, yeah, I think I've asked that question and have been told no, but I could be wrong about that. So, we'll learn more about it from Jeffrey O'Keefe in the coming days for sure.
Here are the headliners in here. Tommy Lee Jones is going to be playing Jeremiah Jerry O'Keefe. Tommy Lee Jones. Jamie Foxx will be co-starring as Willie Gary. And one of the attorneys on O'Keefe's defense team, 1995, Bill Camp, is playing Raymond Lowen, the chairman of the Lowen Funeral Conglomerate. Jeff O'Keefe said Grandpa was going to be played by Harrison Ford. Ford broke his leg filming the latest Indiana Jones movie, so it's going to be on Amazon. Is that a series or it's just one movie? I'm not sure.
I think it's just a movie. Yeah, I think it's just a movie. That's what I hear. Again, we'll learn more about that.
Most interesting.
Hey, Paul, can I bring you back on something if you don't mind?
Yes,
hey, we
go
were
ahead.
Mentioning before we went to break a few minutes ago about data and how it's important for us to agree on the similar data points when it comes to dealing with the state income tax. That's when you're developing a roadmap that's going to help us all sort of get on the same page. Data points, agreeing on the data, is one of the most important things you can do. Because if you can't have confidence in the outcome of certain mathematical gyrations, and you don't trust those gyrations, then you probably shouldn't be using them. There has to be a unified approach to this. And one of the things that's interesting is I saw where Hob Bryan was quoted, and he said, if you think reducing the income tax will bring a single person to the state, you are wrong. And then he goes on to say, but not having functioning water and sewer systems will keep them out. Well, I don't even think we have agreement on what will happen economically if we eliminate the state income tax. I mean, we should all rally. That should be the clarion call. The reason for doing this are what, and can we bring everybody together around that goal? and then we can start to get into the complicated gyrations of what would it look like for Mississippi to be able to do this, even if it was a step in that direction. And data point, your point about the data point, I just want to come back to that, is extraordinarily important.
Yeah.
And we're going to be getting more information, more projections here in the next day or two, and we'll see.
Ricky, you know how you're a wildlife guy. You know how Mama Bear is with her cubs? She will fight and defend. That's how Democrats are to taxes. They will fight, claw, and defend. Facts don't matter. Nothing matters. If you're taxed 100% and you ask for 99% for a 1% relief, they become Mama Bear. They don't want to give it up regardless. Always good seeing you, sir. Appreciate it, and I thank you, and
you too,
enjoyed
buddy.
your input. Thank you, Ricky.